If you look at the world today, even countries that stand 100% for private enterprise are by a strange evolution changing over fairly rapidly. In almost every country of Europe, a deliberate changeover is taking place. The pace of the changeover differs from country to country. It is not enough merely to increase production unless you know what happens to the produce. The early 19th century or the late 18th century saw the growth of modern industrialization, and the rate of production increased tremendously. The people in England who produced were not men who spent their money in luxury. They lived a hard life. It was almost a religion with them to save money for development, to develop the country. They lived simple lives, but in saving for the country, they used their workers in a way which nobody can conceive of as tolerable today. The conditions that existed in England in the early 19th century were really amazing, but they did thereby lay the foundations of a certain process of saving for the development of England. If England had to do the same today, she could not do it because social objectives have changed and the problem of industry has to be approached in a different way. I just mentioned controls. Obviously, nobody is going to say that controls are good in themselves and should be retained for their own sake. At the same time, I think nobody is prepared to say that there should be no controls. Whatever happens, if that is the position, it is a question of examining when, where, and which controls are necessary. The question of social objectives is bound to come up when the possible consequences of imposing controls or withdrawing them are considered. For instance, it is my firm belief that one of the fatal steps that my government took was to remove control on cloth 2 or 3 years ago. It was a dangerous step which had dangerous consequences, and I am not prepared to face those consequences again. If those consequences are repeated, the whole social structure will tumble down. Of course, controls encourage corruption and all that. I should like to do away with them, but I am not prepared to see starvation and nakedness over large parts of India for the sake of some theoretical idea that if we did not have controls, we would gradually settle down. Of course, we would, but gradually. Most of us will be dead too. Therefore, I would like you to realize that any policy you may undertake, adopt, or recommend, whether economic or political, cannot be judged from the kind of static viewpoint which one might have accepted some years ago. We live constantly on economic and political volcanoes. It may well be that some policy that might have been profitable or at any rate could not have produced disastrous results some years ago, if followed now, may produce such repercussions as would shake the whole social structure which we all represent.